Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome back in my regular sections of English classes on Wednesday. My name will appear on your screen in a while, so without wasting time, we will introduce today's topic, and this is relevant, to the topic that we discussed and learned last Wednesday. It's on the board and right here on my screen too, This is what we are going to do. It's relative clause, part B, part A, we discussed last week. And in today's relative clause, we will actually talk about the techniques of omission. How to omit some words, which are actually verbs and relative pronouns, to bring another level of variation, in using clauses. We're going to discuss on that part, and if we have extra time left, then I will introduce to you, other clauses which I have highlighted using the green color right over there, adjective clause, and not only clause, we'll also try to learn adjective phrase. Along with that, adverbs, similar concept, clause and phrase, and then noun clause. So, functions. What are they, and how they are going to be helpful, in making our language a little garnished. If you want to fabricate your ideas and make sure you appeal your readers, stay with me not only in this class. Today, I'm going to teach figures of speech and rhetorics for grade 9 students, which I shall be doing at 11:15. That's the approximate time. So we go to focus on this. A small recap, maybe in a minute, we will focus what we did last week. Last week, in the relative clause part A, I introduced you some concept of defining and non-defining relative clauses, the use of comma and without comma. Along with that, we also briefed in the relative clause, there is main clause and the subordinate clause. Today, we are going to explore more about those subordinate clauses, in the names of these four things that I have highlighted right here. And some of the important things, again, it's a recall. When you're doing relative clause, relative pronouns becomes very important. This is what we discussed last time. And when you are doing relative pronouns, I emphasize on the idea of using the concept of antecedent, if you remember. That actually tells you, how to choose and supply the correct form of verbs in relative clauses. Now we will proceed. Before we start, let us read some of the examples of relative clauses, in sayings from famous people. I have listed four of them: Albert Einstein, Jane Austen, Soren Kierkegaard, and Irma Bombeck. You must have known, these people. Of course, you know Albert Einstein's. Jane Austen, is one of the classical, novel writers. I prefer her writing, The Pride and Prejudice. If you want to read, it brings you the contextual ideas. So here are four. Let's read only two sentences. He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. This is one example of the relative clause, If you don't know the meaning of the word, so wrapped in awe, the phrase, wrapped is like getting engrossed. Awe is happiness, the extreme form of. Next one is, those who do not complain are never pitied. So start complaining, if you want to feel good and if you want to keep on growing. The others you can read. Examples I brought, of relative clauses, how they can keep on, coming in our context of studies. The next page will take you closer to a few other examples, I have highlighted in various colors. Two sentences are given separately, and right after that, immediately, those two sentences are merged by using one relative pronoun, forming relative clauses. So let's read few numbers. I'll skip the first one. Rather, I'll choose second, which and that for things. I don't like stories, first sentence. They have unhappy endings. Now, when you're combining stories and the second sentence with the first, obviously, last time I told you common element, and the common elements here are stories and they. So the formation, I don't like the stories that have unhappy endings. A relative clause is formed. Okay, go with the next example. I'll choose whose. Whose, okay, for he's, her, or their. And possibly we talk about this word. We use this word for possessions and belongings. We saw some people. Second sentence, their car had broken down. And now when I put these two into one, it reads, we saw some people whose car had broken down. So you have got examples discussed here. The last example talks about place, okay, and that is actually, okay, signifies the ideas of adverb. Now, how adverb, why noun, okay, when to use adjective, we will be discussing, okay, after I introduce the examples to you. So, a quick review. In fact, this is not just a review, but additional special techniques of understanding clauses we're going to discuss in points. First, relative pronoun I have listed is who, and you can read it is normally omitted in defining relative clause if there is a subject afterwards. Recall my class last time, see the example here. The girl who I saw at the party is my niece. Full stop is missing, you can consider that. I have just noticed it right now. Now, when I use this sentence, it's right, but see if I can remove or omit the relative pronoun who. Does it make sense? This is what we learned yesterday. The girl I saw at the party is my niece. It makes sense. And, of course, the technique, read the tip there. You can only omit, okay, in the defining relative clause. Defining relative clause without comma. If you're using this with, okay, non-defining relative clause, a clause introduced with a comma separating the subordinate sentence, you should never do that, all right? The example will be given here. In non-defining relative clauses, it cannot be omitted this way. See, the comma is used. Now, I cannot say, Mary, I saw at the party is my niece. That is practically wrong. So, I would be using comma and I would be using the relative clause. In speaking, how does it matter and how can you show that, okay, by taking a pause, like Mary, who I saw at the party, is my niece. So the way of speaking actually tells you what you are using in language. Similarly, okay, when there isn't a subject afterwards, or if it is a non-defining relative clause, we can omit. See the techniques, okay? If there is a lexical verb, now this is something special, so I would highlight here for all of you how to use present participles, okay, in relative clause formations, which are actually the verb four formats. See examples, okay, it will give you very clear idea. The girl who read the story is my cousin. When I'm using the expression who read, okay, with its antecedent, whose antecedents, and that is the girl. So the focus is here. It's the main verb function that I'm using, all right? It's a lexical verb which has got different forms. So that can be used, okay, by omitting the relative pronoun who after being changed, okay, it in its verb four format. See, how does the sentence occur then? Okay, I will just remove that and probably I will give you the new sentence. The girl reading the story is my cousin. Now, this way, we apply the use of present participles, okay, in our clause formation. And that is one way of, okay, bringing variation into our writing. But remember, okay, where can you do this? It is possible, okay, when your antecedent is further preceded by a relative pronoun, which actually governs, okay, a lexical verb, a verb that has all those five forms functions. Otherwise, you should not be trying it. Let's study a few more examples. Okay, here I have highlighted now adjective clause and adjective phrase to make you understand about the variation that I have been talking. Both adjective phrase and adjective clause. If you don't understand what are they, I will keep on explaining, do not worry. Perform the role of an adjective. So if you remember the parts of speech, 8 parts of speech from grammar, of course you do. Okay, what is an adjective? Of course, it is a describing word. It is a noun governing word. Okay, it modifies, okay, the features of noun that you are using. It tells you something more about the nouns. And this is what we are going to have. It's same here. The only difference is like we will have phrases, not just a word, and a group of phrases that makes a sentence. Impartial here because it is a subordinate clause. So ignore the definitions. You can read it later, but I will explain that, okay, to you through examples that I have brought. Look at the first example, please. It's about pizza. Okay, maybe your mouth is watering. Mine is. So pizza, which most people love, is not very healthy. This is, I'm using non-defining relative clause, which most people love. Okay. Now, what is the function of this particular verb? What is this doing in this sentence? Why are you using this? I could have simply said pizza is not very healthy. Okay. Now, I am giving you one additional information about pizza that most people love it. So you understand that when I use this clause function, and therefore, which most people love, that part from which, okay, from which continuing up to, okay, love. This whole part, which is the subordinate relative clause, okay, actually does the function of adjective. It describes pizza, therefore that becomes adjective clause. In the previous sentence, okay, if I just quickly take you back, okay, the girl reading the story, see, reading the story. The girl is my cousin. If I omit reading the story and I just say, okay, the girl is my cousin, is a simple sentence, but reading the story again tells you, okay, something about this girl. But unlike the sentence I was discussing, okay, which most people love, that is a full sentence. It has subject and verb and the part, subject and predicates. But here, you do not have that sync. So, this part only becomes a phrase. And that is why reading the story here becomes the adjective phrase, okay, which most people love. Okay, it syncs perfectly with both subject and predicate parts. It becomes adjective clause. So functioning adjective becomes clause and phrase. Functioning time adverbial cases becomes adjective clause and adjective phrases. What are noun? Okay, there are something different. I should be talking about that at the end. Right now, okay, I'm jumping to the slide that we're discussing with some examples for studies. I've given quite a lot. I will do number 4. Fruit that is grown organically is expensive. See, fruit is expensive. That is what your main idea is. But you are telling more about, okay, fruit. It's not ordinary fruit, okay, that you find in the markets, okay, but the fruit that is grown organically. So that is grown organically again becomes a clause and it defines fruits and therefore it becomes adjective clause. All right? Or if I want to make it into phrase, how can I try this? Okay, fruit, I will use comma, grown organically. See, I will just exclude, okay? We're talking about a spatial technique here. Spatial technique of understanding clause further is the idea of omitting some possible words. All right, deleting some possible words. And I have just deleted 2 words, that is. So that becomes fruit, comma, grown organically is expensive. So when I just use grown organically, it's not the whole sentence, it's a part, therefore it again becomes adjective phrase. So that is how we can distinguish what is clause and what is phrase, okay, though they both are adjectives, functioning adjectives, of course. Now you will see similar examples, okay. You can read, you can learn, and you can check how the subordinate relative clause is functioning as adjectives in other sentences. For your efforts, okay, I brought more in the list. You can see phrase and clause differences again. The dark-jacketed woman next to her is a servant. Now, these are phrases. The previous ones, I have introduced clauses. This one, okay, on the screen, if you can see, just take your time. Okay, I will take my moment, quickly see how phrases are used and what are those phrases describing a particular noun. In the first sentence, woman is a noun and it is described by the word the dark-jacketed. In the second sentence, again, the term, see, something explained to you. The term dark-jacketed acts like an adjective and describes the noun woman. All right, let's think about the example again with one small change. Now, this is again another technique that we are applying. The dark-jacketed woman who is next to her is a servant. So see how we can add words, how we can delete words, and how we can keep on making, okay, changes, okay, in our writing, in our understanding, in our, okay, way of expressing our thoughts to people who are listening to us. The The last information I'm reading from the screen, the adjective clause is okay, who is next to her as a servant. The words who is okay do not appear, and that is how okay I can simply understand right on the top the first sentence, the dark jacketed woman okay next to her is a servant, a special technique of using okay participles. Now here another okay significant change, the dark jacketed, or like okay the burnt woman, the hospitalized woman. When I'm using okay words like this, previously I taught you about the use of present participle. Now here okay something related to it okay I have just brought you the new concept of using past participles. All right. Now, what are past participles? Past participles are verb 3 structures. So, when you understand, when you comprehend the techniques, you will be able to furnish your language, and then you are able to gain the recognition. And when you will show your writing to someone, of course, they will say to you, okay, wow, how beautifully you have written, how beautifully you have expressed your ideas. Now check with more examples of adverb clauses. Okay, I should not be going in detail on this because right now it is a little complicated, but many of you there might know things on your own. So here is simply one exercise or one example we should discuss on understanding adverb clause. And maybe I can relate that idea with adjectives too. Jennifer scrubbed the bathtub until her arms ached. Now, the clause that I have introduced here is until her arms ached. This until, okay, is another conjunction which is not the concept of relative clauses. All right? Because in relative clauses, we learn relative pronouns who, when, where, whose, whom, that, which. But this is now until, okay, this is something different. And now it talks about, okay, the action being performed. Like, how did Jennifer scrub the bathtub? How did she scrub it? So it modifies the action of the verb, hence it becomes adverb, just like when I say she sings melodiously. Melodiously actually modifies the action of the verb sings, and therefore it becomes adverb. And if you apply the same understanding, okay, until her arms act actually modifies the action of the verb scrubbed in this sentence, and therefore it becomes adverb. And because it is a clause, okay, it has subject and verb, and there is subject and predicate function. Okay, so we can consider it to be adjective clause. Now, if you remove this subject predicate part, then it becomes adjective phrase again. See one more example, okay, the last one I will read. After having my wisdom teeth out, I had a milkshake for dinner because I couldn't chew anything. Now, when you introduce this particular clause, because I couldn't chew anything, it again, okay, modifies, okay, what you are trying to say in the first part. After having my wisdom teeth out, I had a milkshake for dinner. Now, why did you have the milkshake for dinner? Okay, the reason is here because you couldn't chew anything. And when you give reasons, okay, are actually the adverbs. You know that, okay, you have done it several times in your schools with your school teachers. So whenever you function, okay, parts of speech, you always have to consider the ideas, okay, which you can bring from what you have learned in your previous grades. How have you understood the functions of vocabularies in English grammar? The 8 parts of speech, and among them, 4 are always, okay, important. It's not that the other 4 are not important, but most of the people, they have to really get focused in using nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. So basically, we get confused, okay, if you fail to read these things. Prepositions and conjunctions, okay, they come and go. They come and go, okay, while we keep on using them, and contextually, okay, we understand them. But these are something extra. And I recommend you people to start paying attention, okay, on these 4 parts of speech in your learning upgrades. Who, okay, now we'll just go for studying who one more time, maybe something that we have yet not understood. Let's see how we unwrap and understand who further. If the verb afterwards is a model, now we're talking about a model auxiliary verbs. Okay, I will just remove a few informations from the board. Don't forget participles. In one of the examples, when I taught you about present participles, I talk about the lexical verb, if you remember, right? The verbs that can be applied into 5 forms. The read was example, and I put it into reading. Now, what if there is modal auxiliary verbs? Like example, you will get it here. The modals with the auxiliary functions. The girl who is sitting, not like who sat. In the previous example, we say like the girl who read, and then the read becomes reading. But here it's not who sat. It is or who sits. It is who is sitting. The verb is followed by to plus be verb. Now we're talking about to plus be verb or simply be verb. All right. The girl who is sitting next to John arrived late. In such a case, can we omit who is and say like the girl sitting next to John arrived late? See here, if it is possible. If the verb afterwards is modal, we cannot do it this way. Then how can you do it? Like how to understand, the concept of modals then. Let's explore that one more time. See here, if it is the verb to be plus an adjective, we omit the pronoun and the verb. Now this is possible, but when you do that, there's a special technique of changing the position of some words. Like here in the sentence, how can I do it? The girl who is tall, the to be verb is followed by adjective. In the previous example, to be verb is followed by a verb. Like who is sitting, but here who is tall, adjective function. So in such a case, I can replace the relative pronoun who, and I can replace the to be verb, which is. But when I do that, what should I do? I will simply, bring the adjective tall before the noun, because an adjective is always, used before a noun. If you're using a noun there, that is a regular occurrence in grammar. So when I put that thing, how does the sentence look like? The sentence becomes simple with a new variation that we have brought. The tall girl is my cousin. That is another way of, understanding sentence variation. Now, if you prefer this one, this is what we have been writing actually. The tall girl is my cousin. This is what we have been doing since small grades. But now, we can and we have understood that such simple sentences can also be, transformed into larger sentences with clause function for bringing variation in our writings. With that, we'll move on to the next example. This is point 5 for who. Lots of ideas for who. If the verb afterwards is to have. Now see, there was to be verb, state verb. Now we have got to and have verb. So what should we do for to and have verbs? Let's read it here. If we have to and have verb, then we introduce one new concept, and that is prepositions. The concept is, prep, or I call them prepositions. In fact, we all call them prepositions. How does it happen? See here, the man who has, who and has, it's have verb. We will regard, here cancellation, to be, and now we're using have verb. So with have, when you are using, adjective, now again, see, there is dark hair plus adjective, and of course, adjective functions with a noun in grammar if you want to know, Now, when I use such a technique, can I bring a change? Can I delete, can I omit the relative pronoun and the verb? Yes, I can. But with that, I have to introduce some prepositions. And here we are using with. So if I remove that part and add with, and that makes sense again, the man with dark hair is my brother. Full stop is missing again. So here again, with dark hair becomes adjective phrase. Right? So see, they keep on revolving around everything, all the techniques. They keep on revolving around, and you have to pay attention right there. Once you know, it's done. We got now whom. So Regarding whom, information is displayed on your screen. Now you can also read rather than me. Uh, it is normally omitted in defining relative clause because there is always a subject afterwards. Remember, it is more colloquial. This is a kind of a recap. I have already taught you this. This is an example, the girl whom I saw. Do you remember something that I've taught you last time? Okay, if you are using relative clause, a relative pronoun, who can become whom, and then you have subject plus verb structure. Just like this one. The girl whom I saw at the party is my niece. In such a case, we can omit the relative word and then make a sentence just like this. The girl I saw at the party is my niece. But remember, if there is a preposition before the pronoun, okay, you really cannot do that. But that can be again transferred into another idea, which I will show you here on the screen. Please focus. Okay, shift your concern and focus on the screen. See the example here. In the first example, on the top, the girl whom. I am not using any preposition. So I can do that. I can bring that change. I can just delete that word and make a sentence without a relative clause. But yet, it is a relative clause. It's removed. It's hiding. It was not necessary. So to make it more colloquial and practical in use, I have deleted. But in the last example that you will see, the girl to whom I was talking is my friend. Okay, here I simply cannot remove that, but if I want to remove it, I have to bring certain changes. We will discuss about that in the next slide. So in non-defining relative clause, it cannot be omitted this way or any others ever. But how to make changes when you introduce prepositions, here is something that we are going to learn. Okay, now that was an example, of course. It says, you cannot do it in any possible ways. Now see the example of which. It is normally omitted in defining relative clause if there is a subject afterwards. Keep on understanding relative defining and relative non-defining clauses. If some of you are having trouble right now, I would recommend you to watch my previous class, which I took on last Wednesday. That's available. The recordings are there. Once you go with that part A, and if you check this recording one more time, you will have the overall idea. We will squeeze them into one big part from two separate halves. So the book which I bought yesterday is good. Now, can you remove that? Yes, you can do it because you are using defining relative clauses. So it becomes, the book I bought yesterday is good. If there is a preposition, it cannot be omitted like we discussed. The book for which I was looking is hers. But, just a moment ago, I told you, sometimes, a skill can definitely help you. And here, we can use that skill by introducing another suitable preposition. See, the book which I was looking for is hers. A quick change in the sentence, and then I can remove which, and that becomes the book I was looking for is hers. There are many more examples of which you can see. I will play it for you, and you can pause the recording, you can read the sentences, and even you can try to be like me, explain it for yourself, explain it for some of your friends if you are learning together. And that's how you are going to make sure you complete the task of learning relative clauses. I will keep on showing you the slides. The time has already run out. Here are more examples on where. It will just take less than 30 seconds to wrap up the class. This is for your help, a lot of sentences. And if they are not enough, you can even check them in Google and also learn few of the classes from YouTube, of course. Lots of ideas are flowing, and since we are not going to revive this particular chapter in my next class, if you are taking, here's a help. Noun clause, last examples. I could not explain that today for you, but sometimes, it's good if you can do it on your own. Study the noun clause, and probably in my next class, I can resume from here and continue with the other interesting parts of language learning. Don't forget to watch the next class that I'm going to take at 11:15. It's related. Thank you very much. Goodbye.